Hi, my name's Ella, and for my California Indian biography project, I chose to do it on Juana Maria, known as the Lone Woman of San Nicolas Island or the Last of the Nicoleños. So, her real name is unknown, but her Christian Catholic baptized name is Juana Maria. She is part of the Nicoleño tribe of the San Nicolas Island off the coast of Santa Barbara, but this tribe was known as the Niminkoch by the Chumash people. For the sake of this presentation, though, I will be using the word Nicoleño because I'm sure I'm butchering the Chumash pronunciation. So she's believed to have been born in the early 1800s on San Nicolas Island, where her tribe was hypothesized to have lived for over 10,000 years. She Her tribe left the island on missionary ships, rescue ships, as a lot of articles say, but again, it's very unlikely that it was just a rescue. It was likely that it was involuntary. But she didn't join them on the boats. And her reason for staying on the island is kind of unclear, but multiple accounts say that she missed the missionary ships because she wanted to stay on the island with her son. So some reports say that that she left the boats, like she jumped off the boats, swam ashore, and wanted to stay with her son. Some say that she was out looking for her son and missed the boats. Some say that she just didn't get on the boats. But the most common report is that she stayed on the island because she wanted to live with her son. So it's believed that she lived on the island with her son for years until his death, based on a translation from a Chumash member of her rescue ship. Sources say that she spent anywhere from 8 to 18 years on the island by herself, and she was finally taken off the island in 1853 by Captain George Nidever and his crew. So, Captain George Nidever was a Christian Catholic explorer and ranch owner who lived in Santa Barbara at the time, so his venture to San Nicolas Island was not like a huge expensive super long venture. They just kind of went across a little body of water to get to her. So he and his crew went to San Nicolas Island, and this is where they found Juana Maria living in a whalebone and brush hut all by herself. Some sources say that she was super friendly to them and was like talking to them. They couldn't understand her, but she was walking up, talking to them, offering them food, wasn't afraid of them at all. And a member of Captain Nidever's crew was actually Shumash and was able to semi-communicate with Juana Maria, and it's reported that she left the island with Nidever's crew willingly, like they didn't force her into mission slavery like they likely did to her other Nicoleño people. So she lived with Captain Nidever and, oops, let me go back over there. My screen recording equipment is really weird, so excuse me if some weird stuff happens. So she lived with Captain Nidever and his wife on their ranch, which was pretty much adjacent to the Santa Barbara mission. It's reported that she got along really well with Captain Nidever and his wife, despite the huge language barrier. And it's also reported that she was often marveling at the horses on the ranch and admiring her surroundings, but who's to say how accurate this report could have been because, again, nobody spoke her language. 7 weeks after her arrival, though, she died of dysentery on October 19th in 1853, and possibly the only reason that anybody really knows about her is because she was baptized and buried at the Santa Barbara mission, so she was in the records. Go to the next slide. So her contributions to history, her career, I would consider this a career, even though it's not a career in the capitalist, like making money sense, but her career consisted of taking care of herself on that island for years and taking care of her son until his death. She didn't live on the mainland for long enough to learn probably English or Spanish. So she wasn't able to get a paying job there either, but her place in history is known as being the Lone Woman of San Nicolas Island, or the Last of the Nicoleños, and her story of solitude spread all over the world and served as the basis for Scott Odell's famous book, Island of the Blue Dolphins, which is actually why I chose to do my presentation on Juana Maria, because I adore that book. And she her contribution to history, her main contribution to history, in my opinion, is the fact that she stands for a symbol of indigenous strength and how Native people would have been better off without Christian contact and Christian force. Excuse me. So some of her challenges and triumphs, I'm sure that the death of her son, if it really happened, was a huge challenge because A, he was her son, B, he was the only other person on the island with her, and living on the island and surviving alone for that long was probably a huge challenge. But again, how she spent her time on the island is very much a question mark because no one really spoke her language. But in Scott Odell's book, Karana, the character based off of Juana Maria, faced challenges that could have been a reality for Juana Maria, like trying to escape wolves, fighting devilfish, fishing, orca stuff, like not orca stuff, excuse me, um, like trying to fend off orca when she would canoe. Her main documented challenge was likely the fact that she was still in solitude even after she was brought to the island because no one spoke her language well enough. So she was in solitude physically on the island and solitude intellectually when she came to Santa Barbara. Juana Maria's political, social, cultural impact. So she was kind of a boom in the news kind of area when she arrived in Santa Barbara. She was dubbed the Wild Woman when she was first brought to the mainland, and newspapers reported pretty heavily on her life. I got a little excerpt of a newspaper reporting of her from that time. Apparently, she performed songs and dances for those who came to marvel at her. She wasn't really treated poorly in the same sense that the slaves for the missions were, but she was treated more like an exhibit or an oddity than she was a person. Her story did spread globally, though, and stood as a symbol for Indigenous strength, which, again, big cultural impact. The only quote I could find from her was translated from a song that she used to sing, saying, "I leave contented because I see the day when I want to get out of this island." This quote was translated from the Shumash individual of Nidever's crew when she was rescued. Perhaps the reason she was so okay with leaving the island was because her son had passed and she no longer had any reason to stay. And I think this quote is significant both because it's the only one, but because it shows that she wasn't just a docile follower of the missionaries and she didn't follow them because she thought they were cool or she thought they were interesting or she thought they were the right white way. There was just nothing left for her on the island, so she left because she didn't have anything else there for her. So I think it is important to learn more about Juana Maria because personally, this story makes my heart hurt. She lived on this island with her son and then by herself for anywhere between 8 and 18 years, so at least over a decade if we're taking the average of that. And it only took 7 weeks on the mainland for her to meet her end. Again, I've said this several times, she's a huge symbol for how Indigenous people would have been better off without white Christian force. I think she must have been such a remarkably strong and intelligent woman, and we don't really know that much about her because no one could speak to her, and I think that's really tragic. And again, even if there was no malicious intent from Juana Maria's specific rescuers, like it didn't seem like they went to the island to enslave her to work at the missions. It seemed like they treated her fairly well. When she got onto the mainland on Santa Barbara, they are the reason that she died. She would have lived in solitude if she continued living on San Nicolas Island, but they're the reason that she was living in solitude because they took all of her people. And they're the reason she died when she got to the mainland. So, again, this woman seems remarkable. She seems incredibly strong, and I think it's really, really tragic that we didn't get to know more about her because no one spoke her language and she died before she was able to learn English or Spanish effectively enough to communicate her time on the island. So that's my presentation. I enjoyed learning about Juana Maria a lot, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about it.